you have access to a spirit, a strength that enlarges and empowers you. Even better, you don't need to wait for the next big movement. You can heal the world. It's time for governance by grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka. Brought to you by the Zero Aggression Project. Zap the state and have a nice day. And if you haven't yet got your Gracearchy mug, grace is one of the few things that's left to us, people. I mean, we can choose to practice grace. It's a bigger choice than how you vote or what you think about what's going on. It's really, really powerful. And I want to bring Jim on here so we can get to our real podcast. We're headed toward the big, bad, beautiful bill. And it's not me, by the way, folks. This is the congressional football that is currently making its way through the sausage factory, as Jim likes to say. We're headed into the legislative sausage factory.
Okay.
And we're here today basically to help you parse what's going on and to provide a somewhat more graceful response to our situation, which is, of course, our purpose here on Gracearchy. So I'm going to get back to my coffee, Jim. Take it away.
Okay, let's just set some context here. We have covered some of the concepts we're going to cover today in a previous episode called 3 Laws to Get Congress Under Control. That was episode 38 in the history of the show, so it's back to season 1. We are in a new season right now. We are in season 4.
Unbelievable.
So this was in the early days, episode 38. And the fat bill, right? Big, beautiful. That's just the euphemism for fat. The fat bill is 1,116 pages long. And it came at the last minute with a 42-page manager's amendment. I will explain the significance of both of those figures as we go. And we will touch on the Read the Bills Act and the One Subject at a Time Act before we're done. But we're going to frame this episode in the context of an interview that Vice President J.D. Vance did with Theo Von on his podcast. We will provide the link. This is almost like a reaction show. We have 6 clips we want to play for you, and I will respond to each of them individually and provide a conclusion to this. But the summary statement, the banner headline is that J.D. Vance said the quiet parts out loud. Here we are at the legislative sausage factory. Theo Von is a regular, everyday American citizen. If he was playing a character, he played it purposely well. If he was being sincere, he was being, I think, what a lot of Americans are. I think a lot of people are surprised at how Congress functions. And that's really what we're going to be looking at today. There is no such thing as both, and Tom Massey pointed this out, a big and a beautiful bill. The bigness destroys the beauty in this particular case. And we're going to explain to you why. So we're going to do this, as I said, through clips. And I just want to start. Let's roll right into the first clip. We have Theo Von here, clip A. Okay, at this point, we got to freeze and give a special production notice. This episode, what we go through to bring you the episodes is amazing. Bill is here at 6 a.m. Pacific on our 3rd recording. That's right, our 3rd recording to get this episode done. We had a nationwide crash of our software that we use to stream. Google Cloud had a problem right in the middle of the recording of this show. So little trivia, have some fun, maybe leave a comment below, see if you could spot where it happened, where we picked up from where we left off. And then we set this up, we put it in private mode, and YouTube informed us that Theo Von treats his entire show like music. It's not as melodic as all that. It shouldn't be. We are using this material under what's called fair use. That means we are providing commentary on it. And if we're being accurate here about how copyright law works, we are doing a free advertising service for Theo Von's show by virtue of talking about it. We are not profiting off of it. We are redistributing his material in a way with clips and offering commentary on those clips, which is under the fair use doctrine, in such a way that more people are likely to come to consume his show, if for nothing else than to check up on whether or not I used him in context. So we're going to do something very odd. We are going to read the sections to you so that we can get out from under this copyright restriction. We're just going to read them to you. I'm going to play the part of Theo, no mullet, and Bill's going to play the part of J.D. Vance, whose tie will be appropriately lengthed.
Yes. I wish I'd been able to find a powder blue tie. I could put it on this morning. You guys could
Yes,
see.
I wish I could have gotten my mullet wig, All right,
Okay.
let's do this thing. But the bill, why is it?
So okay.
Because you always hear every congressman or senator, not everyone, but
Yeah.
some like it. I just got it. I don't know what. I
Yeah.
couldn't read 1,000 pages last night,
So, there are different kinds of bills.
Okay.
And I think so. There are things called omnibuses, and omnibuses are like a million different things shoved into one bill, and oftentimes you don't have time to read them. That the House of Representatives actually adopted a rule to where they have to get it, I think, at least 4 days to actually read it to change this, because people weren't getting time to read the stuff before it got voted on.
Yeah. So this is a question that comes up, and I think he asked naturally the very best question that could have been asked, which is, why is this bill so big?
Yes, what Theo asked, right?
Yeah, why is this bill so big? I scrambled to grab my computer because I had on my laptop this morning, I had a piece of language from the bill that I wanted to share. I no longer have it, and so I'm going to have to wing it, and I won't do as good a job of explaining just how bad this is. So one of the things that should be explained is that the Congress cannot read these bills. It's not just a case that the bill should be read. They simply cannot read these bills. The first impediment that shows up is that they try to pass these bills very, very rapidly. The more pernicious the bill, the more likely they are to suspend their rules. And the ultimate suspension and the confluence of the ultimate suspension of the rules and of the unreadability of the bill is literally in an omnibus bill. So they helpfully put a definition up on the screen of what an omnibus bill is. But imagine you just went to, you decided you were going to make a pizza, fold that into a taco, turn that into a fish stew.
Taco Town. You're talking about Saturday Night Live's greatest commercial ever.
That's literally what's kind of happening here. They throw everything in there.
Yep.
And they do this on purpose. And I don't want to get ahead of the plot. JD is going to explain why they do it. But the bill itself, not just its size. So let's start with the size. Imagine you have to read a novel. Okay. The bill we were talking about here is 1,116 pages. So most novels are somewhere between 300 and 500 pages.
Sure. They're like a decent chunk.
Okay. Imagine you were going to read either a sequel or a trilogy of novels. Now, in the omnibus timing, they usually try to pass omnibus bills by a certain deadline, usually right before the Congress is headed out the door for their vacation or a holiday or some other thing. And they rush to get this thing done at the very end, and then they start suspending rules. Over the course of the years that I've been talking about this, I am not making up what I'm about to say to you. This is literally how your government functions. There have been times, number one, where a stack of 1,000-page bill has had so many changes to it in the hours before the vote that the final copy is not available until the night before. And that final copy, to make matters worse, has arrows written on the page, handwritten on the page, notes in the margin, post-it notes attached about things that they didn't have time to get into the final printed version. And there have been times where, because of the late moment at which they're publishing it, they only produce 2 copies, one for the Republicans, one for the Democrats, so that we're supposed to believe that every legislator is going to crowd around the speaker's shoulders and the minority leader's shoulders, and they're going to use their Evelyn Wood speed reading simultaneously as the speaker or the minority leader flips the pages. That's how bad this system runs. This is the norm, folks. And the bigger the bill, and in fact, on virtually every omnibus, the more likely this is to happen. So but I'm not done, because the reading is impossible. I actually just compared this wrongly. The metaphor fails. in comparing it to novels. I was just trying to give you a sense of the size of the reading that you would do. But a novel's actually interesting, theoretically, right?
Yeah, it holds your attention in some way.
You wouldn't keep reading the novel if it wasn't. But now imagine that you're reading something that says U.S. Code 1027A Part 2 will be amended in the following way. Starting with paragraph 4, we're going to move to paragraph 6.
Yep.
And we're going to insert a new paragraph 3, which reads, and then when you go down and start reading, it says, strike the words, go to the store and replace them with go to the place in section whatever. And I'm doing a bad job of this. I was actually I failed. I didn't print out the other thing I needed before we came on the show. I was going to read a section of the Big Beautiful Bill to you so you could see just how bad this is. But you would have to have with you, while you were reading the bill, a section of the U.S. Code right next to you. And then you would have to start marking out what changes happened in it. You would have to start amending it right there on your own because it's not part of the bill itself. It's this content that you're not being given. What got taken out? What is in? Okay. And only then would you actually have something. So reading the pages would be insufficient, but it's still not getting to how bad this is. Because even if you did what I said, let's say that the bill actually did all of that work for you. Let's say that they expanded it so that they explained to you exactly what the changes were going to be. Still not enough. Because there are terms of art in every regulatory venue. And then there are case decisions that were made about it. So the people who are working for the individual bureaucracy covered there will have, and the people who lobby in those areas will have a very specific sense of what's happening. But you know who doesn't? Your Congress critter.
Your congressman, yes.
They don't know because they're not living in that every day, right?
Yes.
There are certain hobbies that you have that you know far more about them than any of your friends, okay? But if I said we're going to put a basket of all your friends' hobbies in here and we're going to write in this fashion, there would be a whole bunch of things you wouldn't understand. You couldn't understand. And that is the condition. And by the way, congressmen are generally ignorant. I'm sorry, but the reason we elect people is that they're really good at shaking babies and kissing hands. They're really good at raising money. And that's it. That's it. Like, if you take those two things away from them, they don't even get into office. Those are their real skills. Their real skills are not at reading bills. So I actually am going to make an argument here today before we're done that it doesn't matter whether or not that they can read anywhere as near as much as it matters where another group can read. And we're going to get to that, but I want to go to the next clip because most bills are full of awful stuff. And the advocates of them almost always say, hey, this one is different. It's full of great stuff. You don't want to lose the great stuff, do you? And this is, after all, one beautiful bill. So let's roll that clip. So remember, because of the copyright restriction, Bill is playing Vice President Vance and I'm playing comedian Theo Von.
The way to think about it is basically, if you look at the campaign speech I gave back in September 2024, and I said we're going to cut taxes on tips, we're going to have no taxes on overtime, we're going to cut taxes on Social Security, we're going to secure the border, we're going to build more border wall, we're going to hire more Border Patrol agents, like all that stuff. All those promises are in this bill.
Okay.
So the way this particular piece of legislation was conceptualized, rather than take up time on a bunch of random different stuff, why don't we just do everything, or at least most of the things that we campaigned on, and that can be done through legislation and put into this bill? So sure, he mentions 5 things. You don't need 1,000 pages for 5 things.
There you go. There you go. Okay. And if this was all the bill was covering, maybe they'd have an argument. Okay. I believe the bill should be limited to one topic. We're going to actually make a specific case for that and show how to make that happen before we're done with the episode here today. But you hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of more things in there that are bad than are in there that are good.
He never even mentions the deficit, for example.
Okay, so we have a democracy. This is what we keep being told. Okay. And when these members of Congress go and they vote on these bills, we have 2 members of Congress who have reported that they were surprised by the contents of the bills. They've been in front of constituents, okay? They are Representative Mike Flood of Nebraska and Marjorie Taylor Greene of Florida. These two individuals have stood in front of constituents and gone, if I'd have known that was in the bill, I think I would have had to vote against it. Now,
Yep.
only 3 representatives. It's in the Senate right now. This is why we're bothering to have this program. Only 3 representatives did not vote for this bill. 3 voted against and 1 voted present. There were 2 absent. I'm not counting them. I have no idea what their actual stance would have been. Only 3 went on the record to say, I will not support this bill out of all the Republicans in the House. The Republicans have a majority, and it won by 1 vote. So if there would have been a 4th Republican, we only needed 4 Republicans to say no, and this bill's dead. But it is the unseen. So I want to do 2 things with this. First, I want to pretend that it isn't J.D. Vance sitting there. I want to pretend that instead it had been Tim Walz sitting there, and he had said, we campaigned to do certain things. And amongst those was a $25,000 first-time homebuyer credit that will inflate the market wildly. Another thing is we were going to forgive all student loan debt. Another thing is we were going to, and just go through the list. Would the people in the audience feel exactly the same way? Because it would literally flip. The same people who like it would suddenly feel very differently, and the same people who dislike it would flip to the other side. And so, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see your point.
The process, the process should always be at work, that we're not going to do this because we are not always going to be the majority. But second, and this is what you were getting at, underneath the things that he's saying, this is what makes the bill beautiful, is a whole bunch of things that make the bill unbeautiful. Okay? All right. So let's go to clip C. We're going to play clip C. And this one explains why they cluster fill a bill. Reminder, Bill is playing J.D. Vance, and I am playing Theo Vaughn.
The political answer to your question okay, so let's just say I'm not going to name names. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but let's say you've got some Republican congressmen who really love no taxes on tips, but they're a little squishy on the border stuff. They don't agree with what we're doing on the border, okay? Or let's say you got somebody who really loves what we're doing on the border, but they don't necessarily they don't want to cut taxes for one reason or another.
Right.
If you take enough of this stuff, of our promises again, and put it together, you say, look, even if you disagree with parts of it, this is what we campaigned on writ large. And so we got to vote on this thing and make it happen. So first of all, can I just make a suggestion here?
Yes.
We need a pair of scissors. Because J.D. Vance's tie is about 8 inches too long.
Well, that's becoming something of a right-wing fashion trend.
Yes,
in honor of, yeah.
Hence the comment.
I grew up watching Schoolhouse Rock, and there was a bill up on Capitol Hill.
Didn't we all knew this, right?
Yes. And the premise of that video is a lie. Let me explain, okay? Bill was lying to you. And Bill's lie was that he couldn't get past because he had to get everybody to agree with his proposal. But Bill wasn't a proposal. Bill is fat. Bill has lots of things hidden in him. Now, if you were to go and you were to set down a bag full of money in front of your congressman, and you were to say, I will pay you this much to vote for the bill. Number one, you would be accused of bribery, and you would be facing a prison sentence for that act. Just the act. It's your money. You could do whatever you want with it, but apparently one thing you cannot do with it is go set it in front of a congressman and say, in exchange for your vote, I will give you money. You will go to prison for bribing that congressman. If the congressman accepts the money in return for his vote and says, yeah, of course I'll do that, and takes the bag of money and goes in and votes for the bill, he too will go to prison for doing that. But you know who is completely legally allowed to bribe a congressman?
Going to guess lobbyists?
No. The leadership of their party. They are allowed to say, okay, Bill, you're a representative representing San Diego. What do you need? What do you need in order to do it? And it's okay because they are in Congress and it's called horse trading. That's the euphemism that they use for it.
Yes.
And it's also okay because nobody put a bag of money in front of you, right?
Not
What they did is
specifically.
give you something that mattered, a currency that matters to you, which is your ability to satisfy certain constituents that you fundraise from or that you represent in your district so that you can acquire more votes. And then you can report back, I delivered this pork, I delivered this program, I was at this ribbon cutting that I made possible. You are able to say yes to people, and it's all done with other people's money, so it's virtuous. It's done with taxpayer money, so it's completely good. It's a great, great thing that we're doing this, right?
Oh, please don't use the word virtuous connected to that. But I understand.
No,
what
you
you're
understand what I'm saying? Like somehow it's become blessed, somehow it's become good.
Yeah.
Right? It's not. It's a bribe.
Not.
It's a bribe.
It's
okay?
the same thing as money. It's a bribe.
So we're not going to actually do the Democratic thing. Bill isn't going to get debated on Capitol Hill. We're going to end up stuffing so many things into the bill that everybody's votes are bought. And then the bill's going to be big enough so that we all have the ability to passively say, hey, I didn't have time to read it. And it's going to go through.
That is not going to fly any longer.
So you don't have democracy. And bill on Capitol Hill is a farce. Okay? Listen, I wish I was wrong, but this is how the system works. Okay? Now, this next part, clip D. Here is J.D. Vance saying the quietest part out loud.
Jim, I'm a piano player, not a musician.
Well, you're doing a great job of getting all of J.D. Vance's stuttering and stammering in there. So keep up the good work.
It's a natural. Here we go. Clip D. There's a final answer to this question, which is stupid and parliamentary, but it matters. It's actually the most important answer is, okay, any bill you do you got to put it on the floor and you got to give people enough time to read it and you got to amend it. And then you got to do a committee process. And there's like a constant stream of things. There's a big process for it. And so if you went through that process for each individual item as opposed as on a separate bill,
cost prohibitive,
it would take over a year to do all these bills.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to prevent taxes from going up. We don't have that much time to do it. We got to secure the border. We don't have that much time to do it. We got to go do the no tax on Social Security. Like if we did that 18 months from now in a smaller bill, then we would not be keeping our promises to the American people.
I see. So there is a degree to which he is exaggerating, but I want to focus first on how I get accused of exaggerating. So because I am speaking for these ideas about reading the bills and limiting them to one subject and have been doing that at downsizedc.org, people can go to downsizedc.org and read these bills for themselves. They're short. They should read them. But people are surprised. They're astonished that Congress actually does this. So there's almost this sense at which, Jim, are you exaggerating that they don't do the work? And I'm not. And here he's saying the quiet part out loud. We can't wait. We have to get it, moving. We have to push it out there, right? It's going to slow us down. Now he's exaggerating about how much it's going to slow them down. It's a coming and going kind of problem because this bill won't fully take effect until the next fiscal year. That's what they're trying to work on is what they're going to do, not all the premises of it. And the idea that somehow or other it's going to be infinitely delayed isn't really true. It may slow things down, but that's a feature, not a flaw.
Yeah. That's the way things work.
Well, it's a feature from the perspective of downsizing, which is the precise problem with this bill. It doesn't downsize. It's quite big. So it's not an accident that an organization called downsizedc.org suggests that these are levers. Archimedes said, give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I'll move the world. These are levers that are designed to make them slow down, sweat the details, just like their constituents have to when they try to figure out how to comply with this stuff. So what we want is to slow them down. That is something that would be a feature. But he's saying the quietest part out loud. We can't get these votes. So I hope that what we end up doing is slowing down. That's the objective or the goal. He's seeing that as a flaw. There, again, are tons of things hidden in this bill. The bad outweighs the good. It outweighs it so much that these provisions could not stand on their own in a democratic system.
Oh, yeah. That one about defunding courts that try to rein in executive power.
Yeah. There's just a ton of provisions in there that, right? Okay, so from here, I want to go to the next clip, Bill, which is clip E, and just say before you play that he is admitting that Congress could change the rules. The way they just prioritize those, I wonder. It just feels like it would be so much easier to digest as a regular person.
Yeah.
If you weren't thinking like, well, heck, my guy's got to stay up for 600 nights to get all this information in, and to get in accurately and then to make fair choices on it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the answer to your question is you could do that, but Congress would have to change its procedures.
And could Congress do that?
They could.
If they voted to do it?
They could.
100% they could. And the only reason they haven't is that the American people haven't insisted they do so. That's it. That's the whole explanation. Okay. So here's the deal. I actually care less about whether members of Congress read these bills than I do that the public has a time to read the bills. In the Read the Bills Act, there is a provision that says that after the final reading of the bill, there is a 7-day clock that starts before they can cast their vote. And during those 7 days, the bill has to be presented online. This means two things. One, you can read the bill, ladies and gentlemen, and that matters. And two, everyone else can read the bill, including people who have expertise in areas of the bill, so it could be crowdsourced. Your radio talk show hosts, your news programs, your the groups that you belong to that monitor various things about legislation, all of them have time to report to you in a way that will get out into the public in a crowdsourced way what is actually in the bill. And you have time to give your representative feedback. Okay? This is crucial because they're not going to, under no circumstances, we get asked, in fact, we've been criticized. How do you know they read the bills? You pass this law, Jim. How do you know they'll actually read the bills? As if there's some perfect solution to this problem. And I always say, well, we did think about including an aptitude test, a comprehension exam at the end of every session. They could take the test and, if they pass, they're allowed to vote. We were going to call it the No Senator Left Behind Act, right?
You're making my day, man.
We all know that there's no way to design the perfect test that's fair and just and, all the rest of it. We all know that that's not a thing. Okay, so we have to grow up a little bit. What happened was Mike Flood and Marjorie Taylor Greene got questioned by their constituents about things that were in the bill after the vote occurred. And I'll explain how the one subject at a time addresses that. But they get asked afterwards, and the fact that they get asked that question means that they got exposed for not having read the bill. They had to confess in front of everybody they hadn't read the bill. I'll explain why they won't be able to do that once we have read the bills. But what I want you to understand here, the point I really want to drive home now, is that the people you trust to give you information, as well as you yourself, should be better armed. You should have enough time to consume the content and then give them feedback, because much more important to them than what is in that bill is what you think of it. We got one more clip to cover, and that is about the 72-hour reading rule. Representative Thomas Massey said the House has a 72-hour rule which requires the bill to be posted 72 hours before passage. What does that even mean?
Yeah. I'd never heard that before. And look, I mean, Thomas Massey and I get along. But my understanding is that the bill text was people have read, literally weeks to pass it or to read it. And the reason, okay, here's the criticism I'd give of what Thomas Massey is saying right here is what's going to happen is the Senate has to vote on this bill, and then it has to go back to the House, and it may change like 1%. Like the Senate may change a sentence or paragraph here or there, but it's going to fundamentally be the same bill. So the idea that people haven't had an opportunity to actually read it is ridiculous. they're in fact going to have to vote on it again before it even becomes law.
So they'll have more time?
They'll have more time.
Got it.
Like by necessity, by law, they have to.
Understood. And Bill, I just want to congratulate you on being a model vice president. How did it feel to be vice president in these clips?
Oh, it's such a sense of power. I can hardly wait. If the big guy goes, it's all mine.
So the reason that the representatives signed on to this is that they go back home into their district at election time, or it was much more immediate in the case of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Mike Flood. And they get called out on the fact that they voted for things that they never, ever would have supported. It looks like they lied to their constituents. And the further back on the bench you are, if you're not one of these cardinals, you have no control over what is going in these bills, but you are expected to support. There is an active carrot and stick system. We don't have time to get into it, but the short version of it is your representative doesn't represent you. They represent their leadership. If they go along, they get support in their district when they go back home to run. If they and the opportunity to go up the ladder into higher positions on committee assignments that they desire. But if they don't go along, they get a stick. They get primaried. Money gets taken away. They don't get the money or support. Their opponent gets that money or support because they want people who will obey the leadership. And all of you comply. You all play along. When you vote Republican, you all play along. When the Democrat, you all play along. You will unseat, in most cases, a congressman doing the right thing because his own party destroys him. And they all know this. They all know this. So you could count in every single Congress on one hand the number of people who stand up to leadership. The only exception to that was last term when there were close to 20 of them that stood up to the leadership.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, this is not what happens because they understand the carrot and stick system. So the people on the backbencher, we got up to 27 co-sponsors because they understood one subject at a time. I'm not going to have those ads run against me when I get back home because I will be able on one issue every single time to vote my conscience, to vote the thing I promised to my constituents.
Instead of having it all mashed together, like
yes, yes. So the bills,
yes. So let's take them. Read the bills first.
Okay, read the bills. Says that every piece of legislation, before it comes to a final vote, I want to underline final vote. They're going to pass it into law. I don't care about all the preliminary votes. I care about the final vote. So every bill, when it comes to, by the way, the House could be voting on the final version of the bill before it goes over to the Senate. This is something J.D. Vance left out because if the Senate just simply says, oh, we agree with what the House sent over, that was the final vote in the House. It only becomes a reconciliation when there is a difference between the two.
Right.
So just to be clear, final vote, there has to be a literal word for word in order reading of the bill by a clerk to the House assembled. The whole bill has to be read aloud. And while it's being read aloud, there needs to be a quorum. I'm willing to negotiate on this when we get close to passing it, but essentially the Constitution defines a quorum as 50% plus one. So the only times bills are going to get there is when there's enough votes that they want to sit through it. And when they go and they sit through this, if the bill's long, there's a saying, the mind will procure what the hiney will endure. Most preachers are taught that when they're in seminary, right? Shorten your sermon because people will stop, they'll tune out. So if the bill's too long, right, they're going to start shortening those bills if they have to sit through it. So we have a read aloud provision. Then before they are going to cast a final vote to pass the bill, they have to sign an affidavit. Go back to Marjorie Taylor Greene and Mike Flood. The affidavit says, I have heard the bill read or I have read it for myself before I cast a yes vote, an affirmative vote, to tax you, to regulate you, to pass a new law, to advance a program that's going to regulate or bind you in some way. They have to if they're going to cast that yes vote, they have to sign an affidavit saying that they have heard or they have read the bill themselves. When that's done, a 7-day clock starts during which the bill is posted online so that you, your watchdogs, the people that you trust, the entire crowd could source and read the bill too. And it gives you enough time, as we already just discussed, to give feedback to your representative. Only then can a vote be cast.
Yeah, that's marvelous.
Then there's one other bill.
One subject at a time?
One subject at a time.
Oh.
So the One Subject at a Time Act is real simple. It says the bill has to have a clear, descriptive title limited to one topic. This bill that we are talking about today did not have a clear, descriptive title. It told
Omnibus.
you nothing about
Omnibus.
the issue that was in there. Well, they literally called it One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Right. What is this, the last thing Congress is going to do this term?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, but the point is that this is, no, they're going to do more. But my point is they're not telling you what's in the bill.
Yep.
So they have to tell you, this is the subject of our bill. This is our thesis. And then everything in the bill has to correspond to that thesis. And if it doesn't, it's not law.
Doesn't belong.
So because Congress is the most anarchic institution in the land, this bill, the two bills we've just mentioned, read the bills and one subject at a time, along with another bill we have, which we will not get into today. You can find it at downsizedc.org. Write the laws.
Write the laws.
These three bills all have an enforcement clause because we can't trust Congress to do the right thing. We don't, this 72-hour rule, it's waived all the time. There's a write the laws light thing called the REINS Act. It's a rule. It can be waived all the time. What we need is a law that binds Congress. And when that, if we do that, then they have to follow the procedure. And you say, well, what's the enforcement mechanism? Glad you asked. Let's say, Bill, you have not paid a tax or a fee that was passed in one of these bills, or you will find yourself in the dock for having violated some regulation or law passed in these. You can make a defense as simple as this: Your Honor, the Congress did not follow these procedures. Read the bills or one subject as appropriate. Did not follow these procedures in passing the law, and the judge is instructed to kick the case with impunity, meaning it can never be brought up against you again. Ergo, they can waste as much time passing as many bills where they don't follow the procedure as they want. So long as you're not bound by it, it don't matter. It's trivia. It's them playing games, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, they do this all the time. They also pass things called resolutions, which don't have any binding effect. So they effectively would not be passing a law. They'd be passing a resolution. They wouldn't be passing a budget. They'd be basically passing a resolution. It'd be more of a sense of the Congress than it would be anything that would actually bind you. And that's the genius of these three bills. So there is a level of deception in the way that we pass laws. And what I want to be clear for people is that it doesn't have to be this way. I am not a fan of having decisions sent to Washington at all. But to the degree that they are, there is a design to how this is all supposed to work. And it is not working the way it's supposed to. And the result is that you're not being represented. So everyone understands at some point, maybe you've had some kind of fiduciary responsibility in your life for another person. Maybe you've had power of attorney. People, a lot of the representatives are accountants and lawyers, so they understand what co-signing means and power of attorney and all these other ideas, right? Our representatives are delegated to go act on our behalf. And if a law is going to be binding on you and you have to sweat the details of it, shouldn't Congress have to sweat the details before they impose it on you? And shouldn't you have a say, even at the final hour, about whether or not your representative should go forward and vote for the thing? And if this inconveniences the people who are your employees a little bit so that they have to return to work, they're still going to get paid. They have to return to work and do it again. So what? I just think that a lot of the friction and stuff that happens is because people are cheating. They're sneaking things in that don't belong. They're passing monstrosities that impact far too much of our lives. If they were forced to slow down, if they were forced to deal with everything one step at a time, if they had constant feedback from us, wouldn't the result give us a more graceful, harmonious society?